Welcome back, folks, to part 2 of the string bending series. 10 cool string bends for electric guitar, or acoustic, as I said, if you've got strong fingers. My fingers are not very strong, and my fourth finger is a dinky little thing that's... So you can use whatever you have. You don't worry about your limitations. Just do the best you can with what you got. Just start off by mentioning that I neglected in the last series to talk about the most obvious rock and roll string bend of all. I alluded to it, but I didn't do the whole lick, and that would be if you're in F up here at the 13th fret, and that would be the bending of to that note, which we talked about, but then you continue over to the tonic. So you hear that all the time. Goes without saying, that's a cliche rock and roll lick. Another thing I mentioned in the text, but didn't really demonstrate, is if you're new to bending, and vibrato actually, you would use your wrist along with your fingers. And you can see this action right here. That's for a bend up. And then if I bend down towards the floor, my wrist seems to come in. Now, everyone's physicality is going to be different. This is the way my deformed hand does things. Yours will do it differently. But the basic principle is that you cradle the neck and use that as a fulcrum in the crook of your hand, and then you and if you're bending down, you've got a couple of things going on, and I'm also adding some vibrato, which helps with intonation. It adds a little emotional content to it as well. Another thing you can do is pick harmonics with a nice bend like that. A la Billy Gibbons and such. So we're looking at 5 more bends here. We did 5 last week. This will be number 6. I call it slide up the neck bend. If we did that up the octave. I mentioned last time the 2 for 1. The minor and the major, same lick, same bend. By adjusting slightly, that same bend can be done in multiple positions. So by extension, you could end up attaching some of those together. Now we go on to our 7th. I'm going to call it half-step flourishes or ornaments. If you bend your note a whole step, you can then do a little half-step flourish, and it will essentially, it'll come back down. Let's do it up here in F, the octave. 3 for 1 here. All off of that F kind of dominant sound. Another half step ornament that you can do is pick the note that you want and then and then bend up into it afterwards from a half step below. Number 8, we'll call it, of course, it's the unison bend. The most logical place for unison bends are between the second and the third string. The cool thing about the unison bends is if it's slightly out of tune, it gives you more bang for your bucket. You can hear those, you can hear the waves of the notes kind of colliding with each other. As you come up into the note, they disappear. The 9th type of bend that we'll talk about is a double stop or a 2-note bend. We talked about intervals in one of the earlier segments I did, and I actually demonstrated some of these 2-note chords or double stops. They're fills that can be done that kind of outline a chord. Here's a very common one here, and it would be in the F minor pentatonic. If we drop that down 3 frets, we get the major form of that. There are a number of double stop bends that you can do. You've got you can also do that here. You've got double stop bends that outline a major chord. Here's the F major. So those are some of the more common 2-note or double stop bends that you can do, and experiment. There are lots more where that came from. Now, if you move on a little further, you can do a 3-note bend, and you can use 1 or 2 notes as a pivot point. Let me just go back to demo up in the F minor pentatonic, up on the 13th fret. So you've got, again, that double stop that we just did, but I'm going to add drop down 3 frets. That cliche country bend. There is another variation on the double stop bends you can experiment with, and that is by adding another note to it in like a pivot point. And that has a very countryish sound to it, but you can also, if you drop that down into more of a minor sound, so there you go, a few common string bends that I like to use, and if you want to delve into this further, I can point you to an exceptional video by Guthrie Govan, who's a virtuoso, and he does, I think, a 4 or maybe even a 5-part video series on YouTube on string bending. Until next time, have fun playing, and We'll see you then.